So
Oh, okay, well, it actually was on the calendar of, I think, beginning, Wednesday? Well, that is yesterday, isn't it?
feels like longer ago.
Shows how my life goes. No, Tuesday, actually, I announced it. Representative Kagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Corry, welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. You suggested in your testimony that you believe that medical marijuana should be treated like other medications. And you talk about confidentiality. Am I not right in thinking that when the DEA checks whether there's overprescription of narcotics, that they actually have the right to see who the patients that a doctor under suspicion is prescribing those narcotics to, so that for medical marijuana to be treated the same as other medications, it would be consistent that the names of the patients should be revealed, or at least the identities of the patients should be revealed. Mr. Corry.
Thank you very much. Excellent question. The difference here is medical marijuana is a constitutional right under our state constitution. There's no constitutional right to Oxycontin, Percocet, fentanyl, or really any other medicine. This is a constitutional right protected by the supreme law of our state that every legislature obviously takes an oath to uphold. So it is subject to a different legal standard than other medications. Secondly, the obvious elephant in the room, DEA does not respect medical marijuana. DEA is hostile to it. DEA wants to eradicate it. They have devoted their entire existence as an agency to eradicating it. So giving the DEA any authority whatsoever in our state constitutional prerogatives makes no sense. As a legal matter, marijuana is unique. There's nothing like it exactly under our laws of our state and our country. There is no analogy. I think the proposal in this bill, though, would create even greater state-level regulation and restrictions on marijuana than it does for any other medicine. Other medicines that are much more harmful, much more addictive, potentially lethal. There has never been a single documented death ever in the world from marijuana. Not one fatality. No other medicine can say that. People have died from aspirin overdoses. So marijuana is a safe medicine. It should not be regulated by the DEA, at least as far as our state law is concerned. Someday, in the probably, hopefully near future, but more likely distant future, marijuana will be on the same plane as other medicines as far as the DEA is concerned. But that day is not today. That day is later.
Representative Kagan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not talking about, I'm not asking about DEA regulation of medical marijuana. I'm talking about whether or not the confidential registry of patients may be used to determine whether a physician should be referred for suspicious recommendation behavior. That's a matter of state law. And are you suggesting that it is a violation of the constitutional requirement of confidentiality, that even for law enforcement purposes, details of the registration list should be divulged to law enforcement authorities? Because it would be an unusual case if one carved out such a broad section of confidentiality that you couldn't even use it for law enforcement.
Mr. Corry?
Thank you. That is another good question. I am suggesting that. I'm suggesting that because the Colorado Constitution, Article 18, Section 14, subsection 3A, says, and I've got a copy of it if the legislatures need one. I assume you all carry a copy of the Constitution with you since you're sworn to uphold it. But it says, no person shall be permitted to gain access to any information about patients in the state agency's constitution or confidential registry, or any information otherwise maintained by the state health agency about physicians and primary caregivers. Confidentiality extends to physicians and primary caregivers, and there's a very good reason for that, because these physicians have been persecuted for years and years, and they are essential to this program. We see in the newspaper where the Attorney General, the chief law enforcement officer of our state, is criticizing our doctors and threatening them with referral to the State Board of Medical Examiners merely for recommending medical marijuana to their patients. These people they're under the gun, they need confidentiality, and this section of this bill would be unconstitutional because it would override the Colorado Constitution that says that the registry is confidential, and that confidentiality extends to patients, doctors, and caregivers, all three of which need that confidentiality.
Representative Kagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You quoted that no person shall be permitted to gain access to any information about patients by the State Health Agency about physicians and primary caregivers, and that is an accurate quote. And it goes on to say, except for authorized employees of the State Health Agency in the course of their official duties and authorized employees of state and local law enforcement agencies, etc. So, I mean, it's not really fair to say, is it, that it's a complete blanket ban in the Constitution, and we're talking about the Constitution of Colorado.
Representative Kagan, I think we'll move on. I think you've made your point, and Mr. Corry has made his. Do you have?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Could I respond?
I would like to move on because we've got folks who have been sitting here for a long time. We've got quite a few other questions from the committee. Representative Waller?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Corry, I think I've heard you talk on this subject before, and I think you stated the last time I heard you talk that you think that this industry shouldn't be regulated at all. In fact, I think you likened it to the internet. Is that still your position today?
It is my position, as I stated at the very beginning of my remarks. Like it or not, the Constitution gave you a deadline as the General Assembly of April 30th, 2001 to enact implementing legislation. You did that, actually. Colorado Revised Statutes, Section 18-406.3 was enacted under that deadline. That statute did implement this section. So the Constitution has given you a deadline, and you're obviously well past it in 2010. So there's that constitutional issue, but there's also the larger policy issue. This bill is a big government, intrusive bill that is without precedent, really. That it puts government between that doctor-patient relationship that has existed well before the United States was a country. I mean, doctors and patients are entitled to confidentiality. That goes back to the time of Hippocrates, and this bill undermines that. I mean, this is so much larger than just medical marijuana. Obviously, that's what I care about, and most of the folks in the room care about, but this is so much larger than that. I mean, this creates a blueprint for unprecedented regulation of the medical field and of that sacrosanct relationship between doctors and patients. So I don't think that this is something that the government should step into. We're in tough times here in Colorado. People's homes are being taken away. They're losing their jobs. They're having a hard time providing for their families. And I'm hoping that the legislature can focus on those things other than a few sick people who are, and an increasing amount of sick people who are medicating themselves and following their doctor's advice. So I do liken this to the internet, and the analogy is quite apt.
Thank you, Mr. Corry. I've got to ask you to keep your answers a little more brief, and maybe the questions can be a little more targeted, and that would help Mr. Corry.
I'm sure he regrets the question.
Yeah. Members of the audience, I would ask you to please keep your extraneous remarks to yourselves as well. Down here, Representative King, and I hope your question is fairly narrow and focused.
Yes, Madam Chair. I just wish I was as smart as you are, sir. Hey, my question is this. You said that there were no known causes of death related to marijuana. Are you telling me that there is scientific evidence saying that smoking marijuana cannot cause cancer?
Yes, there's ample evidence. I'm a lawyer, not a scientist, but I'd be happy to provide you or any other member of the legislature with ample evidence that marijuana is actually curative of cancer.
So you're saying that marijuana cures cancer?
According to a government employee, Dr. Bob Mellamy, chairman of the biology department of the University of Colorado at Colorado Springs, the research into this shows that marijuana does have possible preventive or curative.
Possible.
And Representative King and Mr. Corry, that's going to be the end of that line of questioning. We're not here to debate the merits of medical marijuana. That's been decided by the voters. I realize realize that some of Mr. Corry's statements have been provocative. I think some of the questions from the committee have been provocative. So do we have questions for Mr. Corry about the bill, his testimony, his position on the bill, or the amendments that Mr. Corry has proposed to us this evening? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
For the opportunity.
Robert Chase.